Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Renfrew Center's recovery webinar, Holiday Hustle, Managing Stress Around the Holidays. My name is Hannah Podhorzer, and I'm a member of our Alumni Services team, and I will be your moderator for today's online presentation. Before I introduce you all to today's presenter, Erin Byerly, who perhaps needs no introduction, I want to go over a few announcements to give others some extra time to join in. First of all, we are very excited to announce that day treatment programming is now available at the Renfrew Center of Coconut Creek. In addition to the residential programming on site, day treatment programming will be available 5 days a week for in-person care. This addition will allow our amazing team at Coconut Creek to continue providing their excellent care for folks as they move along their recovery journey. I also want to remind our college age attendees that Coconut Creek continues to offer specific college programming for those entering treatment while still in school. This can be a great option for those starting treatment on winter break, but needing additional support once the school year starts. We also have a new offering that recently started at Spring Lane with a multifamily group hosted in person on Wednesdays from 6 o'clock to 7:30 p.m. Those in the area will be available to drop in as needed for this free group led by eating disorder professionals. This group is a great option for those looking to be better supports for their loved ones and to understand the impact of an eating disorder on the family system in addition to the individual. And if you're looking for more support as an alum, we're hosting both in-person and virtual outpatient groups at the sites listed on this slide. If you're interested in joining any of them, please reach out to us at 1-800-RENFREW. We're also excited to be hosting another alumni panel discussion focused on rediscovering holiday joy in recovery this Monday, December 9th. This panel discussion will take place from 7 o'clock to 8:30 p.m. and will allow alumni to hear from other alumni in recovery. Our alumni panelists will be sharing their story of treatment and recovery, and then answering questions from attendees about ways to continue to find joy in the holiday season while maintaining recovery. We're also still hosting our residential alumni support group monthly, with the next meeting scheduled for Tuesday, December 17th, followed by Tuesday, January 28th. And speaking of the new year, we'll be hosting a rebroadcast of our fall webinar, Midlife Eating Disorders, When Aging and Diet Culture Collide, on January 15th. This can feel so relevant, especially at the beginning of the year when we are bombarded with those New Year messages. You can find information and registration for all of these events and more by visiting renfrewcenter.com/events. So definitely check that page out and register for those that interest you. And as always, if you feel like you need more support at this time or in the future, please call 1-800-RENFREW if you're interested in learning more. Now, to get on to the reason you all are here, which is the webinar. So following the webinar, we would love your feedback. You will receive an email form to be completed online, and that evaluation form will help us develop new and innovative programs that will assist you in your recovery. A question and answer session will also follow the presentation. Questions can be submitted at any time during the webinar by typing them into the chat function. A reminder that your questions will just go to us. I would now like to introduce you all to today's presenter, my colleague, Erin. Erin Byerly, licensed clinical professional counselor, started working as the team leader at the Renfrew Center of Baltimore in September 2016 and joined the Alumni Services team in 2019 as the Alumni Services Coordinator. Prior to joining Renfrew, Erin had worked in private practice, as well as inpatient, partial, and intensive outpatient levels of care. Erin has worked in the field of eating disorder treatment since receiving her master's degree in 2012. She enjoys working with people to make positive and long-lasting changes in life through therapy and building their emotional tolerance. We are so grateful to have her speak with us today on this important and timely topic. So without further ado, the Zoom stage is all yours, Erin.
Thank you, Hannah. And thank you everyone for joining us today. I'm excited to have you all here. So let's get into holiday hustle, managing stress around the holiday. So I named this presentation Holiday Hustle because it at times to me feels like the end of the year is just this race that I'm sprinting through. I'm hustling to try and get everything done, meet expectations that honestly feel more intense than they do any other time of the year. And let's be honest, December just has a lot going on during it. So you'll see here on this slide, these are just the holidays that are happening in December this year. Now, throw in a couple of holiday parties, maybe a birthday, and you've got quite the list of events for 1 month. And we're not even including the fact that Thanksgiving was what, a week ago? Not even as of today. Um, so when it comes to this time of year, I always think it can be helpful to take a moment, think about how to get through this time, and think about like what's really kind of going on for us. So the holidays, they can have this idealistic vision to them. You take a look at these pictures and you'll see joy, excitement, everybody getting along. And traditionally, this is how our society has viewed holidays. They're a time for excitement, joy, happiness. And growing up, we might have even been told that this is what you need to be feeling around the holidays. You need to be excited. I love there's a if anyone's seen National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, it's one of my favorite holiday movies. There's this great quote from Clark Griswold saying, "Nobody's walking out on this fun old-fashioned family Christmas." But if you've seen the movie, you also know that at that point in time, there is very little fun going on. And we feel this pressure socially to be happy and excited around the holidays. And that isn't always the reality. So let's start with what can make the holidays so stressful: family, finances, food, work, weather, social obligations, just to name a few of the stressors we might be experiencing. By no means is this all encompassing, and likely most of us are not experiencing just one of the stressors listed here. Most of us are working to manage these stressors. And while they are not unique to the holiday season, it can feel like there is an added weight to them around the holidays. So, we're going to dive in a little bit deeper around what can make these even more stressful during the holiday season. So, family stress. Let's start with this one. It's often the biggest concern I hear from group members or clients when we are talking about the holidays. It can come from a lot of contributing factors. So, if you're someone that's been through treatment program or you're consistently in therapy, it can feel even more obvious when you're with family or supports who haven't. You might be aware of the family dynamics of avoidance, the strategies people have used, the things that keep coming up, and the things that you've started to let go of, but maybe others haven't. So family can look like a lot of different things, but the goal, the main piece is that these are individuals that are brought together either by blood, marriage, or having spent significant and formative time together. So we're talking about family and individuals who are all bringing different opinions to a situation. Not everyone is going to agree, and there are going to be moments of disconnection. And if they aren't able to be repaired, or we're not putting the effort into having repair around those, we can see that disconnection kind of coming up again and again and creating more stress. So different opinions aren't just about different views, but also hold deeper meaning because of the family history. Family history can impact these stress levels because the holidays might be kind of bringing up old wounds. It might be an anniversary for us of a loss or grief. And being around family, we may notice our own earlier antecedents being activated, as well as noticing this pull to kind of go back to old behaviors because it's really what's expected of us in these family dynamics. You've also done work in recovery on shifting values away from diet culture, and that may not be the case with the rest of your family. We know diet culture is closely intertwined with American culture, so weight, body, food comments might be running rampant as we encounter others whose values are really different from ours. We also might find ourselves comparing to those idealistic snapshots we get of other families on social media or on TV. We might be watching that SNL clip and being like, man, why couldn't I be happy even though I had all of these hard things happen too? And comparing ourselves to other families in a moment without context, it's never going to be fair to ourselves. And this can understandably bring up more uncomfortable emotions and stress. Next, we've got the financial stress. This is a big part of the holiday season. So there's buying gifts, there's hosting parties or family gatherings, and all of these things cause us to open our wallet a little bit more than we would during a normal week or month. So, on average, Americans are spending $528 on gifts around the holidays. And if you're hosting, add on another $431 on average. This is a large amount of money for any of us. And adding that on top of our normal bills, or maybe we're hosting multiple events, or we've got multiple things that we've got a gift give for, it can just really add to that financial stress we might be feeling normally. These additional costs can lead to feelings of overwhelm and then comparison to others who may be spending more or look like they're spending more. And it could lead us to then spending more money that we maybe don't have access to, or we had earmarked for something else, leading to more stress in the long run. So this is something that can really compound on itself. Let's add in the food stress. So many holiday activities are going to involve food of some sort, and it can be food that carries with it kind of that special feeling, as it is likely not always food we have access to the rest of the time. And this specialness of food can lead to feelings of scarcity. It can lead to feeling like, well, I've got to have it now because, this is the only time Aunt June makes her whatever it might be. It can also lead to feelings of overwhelm, as the food choices at a holiday gathering are usually exponentially more than what we would experience at a normal dinner or just like a normal cocktail party. It can almost feel like there is, or sometimes there actually is, an expectation to overeat past our normal fullness cues. Throw in the really odd timing of meals. Much of the world, for whatever reason, has agreed that mid-afternoon is a dinner time on certain holidays when the rest of the year we don't do that. Um, this odd timing can really lead to difficulty with fitting in our normal meals and snacks. And after the meal, or really any time, we may also be hearing those messages around needing to like work off the foods or be good. Um, and then you pair that with the guilt and shame we can feel just generally, especially depending on where we are in recovery. And we're really put in a situation where the stress has been turned up. Work is another area in which we may be feeling the pressure of the holiday season. Many of us are dealing with shorter weeks, either because there are certain holidays where our office is closed or we're taking time off for travel, but we're not necessarily feeling that reduction in the work we're expected to complete during those shorter weeks. So all of a sudden, I've got to do 5 days worth of work in 3 or 4 days of actually being there. There can also be additional tasks that we're being asked to pick up because somebody else is taking time off. And so it's adding to an already busy workload for us. At the end of the year, there are also usually year-end reviews or goals we're working towards, or a deadline at the end of the year, and it can really just feel like the stress is overwhelming. If you're in the Northeast like me, the weather is probably not the super most helpful thing for stress as well. No matter where you are, though, this time of year does mean we're experiencing some change in the weather. So those shorter days, and for some of us, colder temperatures. The shorter days can really lead to us feeling more tired, less energized, and you add in some cold temperatures, and it can make the desire to get out of the house significantly less than what it has been other times. Throw in a dangerous driving condition or two, and it can feel like we've got no motivation left. And we may notice that then we've also got these judgments coming up about being less productive and kind of really maybe beating ourselves up a little bit. That adds to the stress we're already going to be feeling around this time. And for some of us, this can also feel like the busiest time of year with an increase in the number of social invitations we're getting that we might feel obligated to attend for one reason or another. So, in addition to our normal scheduled activities, it can feel hard to prioritize what do I need to be showing up to? What are the expectations people have for me? Then you add in that many of the social gatherings we're going to are going to include some sort of alcohol and substance use as a key feature. And we may notice like this is kind of getting harder, the stress is increasing. On the flip side, if we aren't as busy as those around us, that can bring up a different kind of stress of kind of feeling left out or not cool enough compared to others. So, can I just avoid? Can we just say forget it? Skip all the hullabaloo around the holidays and just kind of go on to the new year. You can to a point, but it'd be pretty hard, right? I mean, the decorations and the advertisements like started back in October, maybe even September in some places. So, in order to really avoid it, it means we're not going to any stores, we're not watching any TV, we're not really interacting with people. And that might be a little bit hard. And avoiding the events and requests would lead to more situations we have to navigate, like telling people no and feeling that disappointment of maybe missing out. And this can create a whole mess of other stressors for us to be handling. And is that really what is most in line with our values and what's going to be most beneficial for us? So, short answer, yeah, you can. Is it really what's going to be best, though? If you've done any treatment at Renfrew, you know that we like to support y'all in leaning into the discomfort that you're feeling. So, what can be the benefit of leaning into the discomfort, especially around the holidays? So, first off, like I said, discomfort is unavoidable. Even if we just avoid this whole holiday season, like that's going to lead to other things that we've got to deal with later on. And the more we avoid something, the more we have to avoid, the more we get ourselves stuck in this cycle. So, leaning into the discomfort can allow us to actually follow our values instead of following the rules we've created in our head. So, when I'm talking about values, I'm talking about the beliefs, the principles, the ideas that are really at our core of what's important to us. What feels like it really matters and is really important to us. And leading a values driven life, even when it's uncomfortable, can lead to increased comfort with uncomfortable situations, as well as increased self esteem as we feel better able to act in line with what we truly believe. So we can learn through these progressive experiences of discomfort, of leaning into that discomfort, of acting in line with our values, that the uncomfortable emotions are tolerable and they're not something we need to avoid. This allows us to really increase our circle of tolerable experiences and increase our window of tolerance. All of that allows us to feel more able to take risks. It helps strengthen our belief in our ability to tolerate our emotions, which makes it less difficult to tolerate the uncomfortable emotions when they do arise. And we know they are going to arise. So all of this really helps us grow and generate those emotional tolerance skills. Having and maintaining boundaries is also really important because it allows us to validate that our beliefs, our wants, our needs are important and deserve to be respected. We might not always feel that way internally. So when we act on that and we practice having those boundaries and maintaining those boundaries, it helps validate for us also, as well as for other people, that like, hey, this is important and this matters. It is, like I said, something that comes with practice. So having opportunities to tolerate maintaining our boundaries and the discomfort that honestly does come with that strengthens our belief over time that, this is really valid and I can do this. That feeling of respect for ourselves and maintaining our boundaries also allows us to experience the things that feel good to us and not do things just because someone else wants us to. It helps us, again, kind of connect with those values and really act in line with us. In the long run, this helps us say yes to more enjoyable experiences, even when they feel a little risky. Maybe we're not sure how we're going to feel about it, but we know we can tolerate those emotions, even when they're uncomfortable. It also allows a chance for our beliefs about how others will react to be disproved. So, leaning into the discomfort, maintaining those boundaries, it also gives us that chance to say, hey, maybe this isn't going to happen the way I think it's going to. That's not always the case. And it gives us the chance, at least, to see if it will. It's really only through taking the risk that we can really see what will happen. Because while we have our thoughts, we know that they're not facts, they're ideas. By no means am I saying that this means we got to jump right into the deep end, start trying to tolerate everything we've been avoiding. But with the holidays coming up, we are actually presented with some really good opportunities to practice tolerating discomfort while also learning how do I keep myself within a window of tolerance. So, I want to talk with you all about how to manage the holiday stress without avoiding it altogether. We've kind of gone over what are the stressors, and y'all might have been saying, like, yeah, I know that. I'm experiencing it. But let's talk now about, well, what do I do with that? How do I work on leaning into the discomfort while also not putting myself in a situation where I'm really outside my window of tolerance? So let's start off again with those family stressors. Take a sip real quick. Again, this is the biggest one we usually hear from people going into the holidays. And all you need to do, because I did this, is search on TikTok or Instagram, and you will find you are not the only one with those concerns. There's a lot of other people that are trying to figure out, how do I manage this stress? So I always like to say, start by having a plan. This can mean a lot of different things. It could be planning how long you're going to stay somewhere, what people you're going to talk to at the event, how you're going to give yourself a break or an out if you find yourself outside of your window of tolerance. Thinking about the aspects of your family you really enjoy and seeing if you can create more experiences around that as opposed to the aspects you don't like can be helpful as well. So really thinking about that and having that plan for, okay, what are the boundaries, and then what are the moments I want to create more of. So, like I said, knowing your boundaries before you go in is a really important piece, because those who aren't used to the changes you're going through, those who don't know or maybe haven't, shifted the full family dynamics, are going to try to push you back into those old family dynamics because that's what's most comfortable for them. They're not necessarily doing it out of malicious intent. It's just what's most comfortable for how the family has gotten used to functioning. So know your boundaries of what you will and won't talk about. If there are things that are off topic for you, I don't really want to talk about treatment. I don't want to be a part of diet culture talk. Knowing those things and having a plan of, okay, how do I get out of it if I find myself in that situation? And knowing what you will or won't do. If you're one of those families, I always think of like turkey trots. If you're a turkey trot family, it might be something where you say, I'm not sure that that's the best thing for me this year. So I'm going to come a little bit late. I'm going to leave a little bit early, whatever it might be. But thinking about behaviorally also, what do I feel comfortable with? Where are my boundaries with that? Knowing this before you find yourself in the situation can make it a lot easier to stick to your boundaries and not fall into these old patterns, because you've come in with a plan, you've come in with kind of some idea of what the limit is for you. I also always like to remind people to be realistic about their expectations for your family and for yourself. No one is going to be able to show up perfectly in every situation, you and your family included. So give yourself a little bit of grace with how you show up, as well as, understanding your family probably hasn't gone through the same amount of treatment as you have. A good reminder is always that in a relationship, if the action isn't good for someone in the relationship, it isn't good for the relationship as a whole. So if you're having to compromise your boundaries or someone else's, it isn't going to be good for the relationship as a whole. I also always like to encourage people to practice being present when with your family. Like I said before, everybody's got earlier antecedents with their family members. Um, and it's important to remember those earlier antecedents don't have to dictate how we respond. Earlier antecedents are meant to be pieces of information that help inform us and that we take into account, but that it's not the only thing we're taking into account. So I always think it's helpful to encourage people to try to stay present in the moment, use those anchoring skills that you've learned, and really try to be present, take in the information of the moment and also your earlier antecedents, um, and make a decision of how to act based off of. And again, I think it's really helpful to find the ways you can create moments of joy when you're with your family. This may mean finding the one person you do feel genuinely connected with and really like sitting with them, kind of just latching onto them. It might mean like, you know what, I'm just gonna go play with the kids because like they seem to be having a good time. I'm gonna be over there where the drama is very low. Or it might be if you're me, you go and hang out with the dog at something. So being able to create these moments of joy will also, one, just make the holidays more enjoyable, the time there more enjoyable, but it also allows you to have some flexibility in how we perceive the experiences we're having. So, how we're perceiving the interaction, we're able to have that flexibility of like, yep, there was all this drama with Aunt Sue or our Uncle Joe or whatever it might have been. And, there was this moment that I really enjoyed. And having that balance and flexibility can be really helpful for us in the long run. Financial stress. So, financial stress has both like logistical and emotional aspects to it, which can make it feel a little bit more complicated. But for managing financial stress, I always like to start with the logistics, which has a flavor of emotions in it, because I think it's honestly kind of hard to separate the two. So, logistically, coming up with a realistic budget for yourself, it's a good first step. It does mean we've got to take that hard look at your financial situation and thinking about what is really feasible and trying to reduce that emotional comparison that we might have to others or even our situation in past years or where you hoped it would be. It doesn't mean you're not going to compare, you will compare. It's very natural to. And when you notice those comparisons, when you notice that, hey, I'm thinking about my sibling who, is doing very differently financially than me. And I just wish I could be buying the gifts that they're buying or things like that. Noticing those comparisons, acknowledging them as thoughts and labeling them as thoughts. I'm having this thought. That doesn't mean I've got to do anything about it. There's even a technique where you can try, like, sincerely thanking your mind for giving you those thoughts, recognizing those, and then bring it back to brainstorming, what are the gift ideas I have in this present moment? You respond to your thoughts almost as if it's a small child and they're giving you input and it's really not that helpful, but you wanna, "Thank you, that was so helpful. Thank you for giving me that, and we're gonna focus on this." So working to kind of acknowledge that the thoughts are there and acknowledge that the emotion is there and trying not to get stuck in it. I also like to encourage people to get creative with the gifts you're looking for. This can mean actually creating something. If you are a creative, crafty person, I think that can always be a great way to kind of be realistic about maybe financially what we can give someone at this point in time. But it can also be creativity with where we find the gifts. Yard sale, thrift shop, something like that, as opposed to like a big box or department store, can be a great way to still get something really meaningful and nice for somebody and recognizing that, we might not be buying it at full price. We're able to buy it at full price. If you're especially struggling with comparisons, I always like to encourage people to get others involved in the budget setting. So this can look a lot of different ways. It might be setting a limit for gifts. My family used to do everyone drew a name, got one big gift for one person in the family, and then for everyone else, you had to get something that was only $2. And the $2 kind of made it really fun because it made people get really creative with what can you actually get for $2? It's a random amount. And it's probably changed a lot since when we were doing this, but that can be a fun way to kind of do it. You can also do non-traditional, suggest doing non-traditional gift giving, doing something like a white elephant or a Yankee swap where everyone only needs to bring one gift. So having those different ways of being creative and involving others can really help. And with any financial constraints, like you are going to notice there are emotions around maybe not being able to gift how you would like to. The emotions aren't bad, they're serving a function. So, what I always encourage is explore what the function is, whether it's in your own therapy or through journaling. Think about like, what is it that I really am is really coming up for me with not being able to give the gifts I want to be able to give? Is it a desire to express the gratitude I have for others? Is it a way for me to show that I care? Is it a way that I'm trying to feel better about myself? All of these experiences are going to tell us something different about the function of the emotion that we're feeling. And when we're able to understand the function of the emotion, we can then work to find ways that we can like address that function within the reality that we're currently experiencing. So I think that's always an important piece because yes, this is a logistical one and it's got emotion tied to it. All right, food stress, managing that. You all know if you've been in eating disorder treatment around the holidays, a lot of discussion, a lot of planning goes into how are we going to manage the holidays when we're around treatment. And when we're in recovery, it's important not to forget that we might still need to be planning. Stress around food can happen for anyone around the holidays, especially with how much diet culture infiltrates our society as a whole. So I like to tell everyone these skills can be helpful no matter where you are in recovery and whether or not you've had an eating disorder before or not. You can share these with your supports. Again, first suggestion is always to have a plan. You might notice a theme here. um, have a plan, understand the times of different events. How is this going to fit in with your day and the meals that you normally have during your day? It does not mean we're skipping meals. It's important to stick with our normal meal schedule as much as possible, but look at the timing, be aware of events, and then look at do I need to move things around without omitting something altogether? Make a plan also if you aren't sure of the food situation at an event you're attending. This means thinking about and maybe even asking whether they will have food or if the food will meet your needs. Involve your other support, whether they're personal or professional connections. Plan to have a meal with someone in your sports circle if you're thinking of skipping, or plan a dinner with friends before an event. This way, you have a little bit more support. I also think the holidays are a great time. Get your dietitian involved. Help use that support, that professional support to help you problem solve any stumbling points you may see coming up. And when in doubt, I always say go back to the basics. Remember your meal plan, focus on variety, listen to your body. These are all really important things that can help us kind of follow through with what's going to be most beneficial for us for the long term. I think it's also important to find the moments of joy. You know, we talked about the possibility that there's special food, and there are special memories that we have with food, and we want to allow ourselves to connect with that. We want to allow ourselves to think back on that time and really have these moments of enjoyment because they are a part of what can make the holidays special, and we want to be experiencing them and not avoid. It's just figuring out, okay, with connection with that memory and with that specialness, what are what are some triggers that might come up? What are some stressors that might come up? And planning for that. All right, when it comes to managing work stress, we might all have the urge to be like Jim here and say that's a 2025 problem. I felt that at different points in time. But as we talked about, avoidance doesn't work in the long run. So, as desirable as it might seem, it's really not our best option. With work stress, we are not completely in control. So, it's important to look at what are the things we can have an influence on. And the first is going to be managing expectations. So, really be realistic with yourself and with those you work with about what you can accomplish in the time you have left this year. Not everyone is going to be working every day. So factoring that into like, okay, what can I actually do? If I'm going to need to talk to Hannah about something, I got to know that, well, Hannah's going to be off this week. So that's not going to happen that week. So then what's the timeline I actually have to do this? Thinking about these things and factoring them in can help us set really realistic expectations for ourselves and for those that work around us. Advocating for what those expectations are and having them set accordingly can be a really helpful thing. Also, recognize that you're going to have some other responsibilities this time of year, expectations, and that this might impact the number of late nights or extra work you can do. If your kids have their winter concert, you know, that might mean, okay, I can't do that 6 o'clock meeting on Thursday or whatever it is, because I gotta be there for them. That's values, that's a value driven behavior for me. So I gotta be realistic with people and I've gotta have that discussion ahead of time. And that's again where making a plan comes in. What you need to do both in and out of work and ask for help or assistance in different areas when you can. I feel like more and more kids are getting half days like earlier and earlier in the year. So being able to recognize, like, okay, we might not be able to pick them up every time. So can we do some sort of purpling? Is there somebody else that can help us with watching them? Remember that burning yourself out at the end of the year isn't going to help anyone. It's not. So give yourself a chance to take a break. It could be taking actual time off and really having that time to just kind of be present with your family or the people you care about. It could also just look like giving yourself 15 minutes to be in your office by yourself and just kind of sit there, listen to a Mariah Carey song or whatever it is that you want to listen to. Or taking those 15 minutes to go and chat and really connect with a coworker. Then it's the weather. Like I said at the beginning, it's not necessarily doing us any favors right now. And with that being said, we can work to honor the fact that these changes are naturally occurring within the seasons. And we don't need to have them add on extra stress. It can just be something we accept. So, working to accept that energy levels will change when there's less light during the day and there are colder temperatures. You know, humans are an animal. You look at every other animal, they're not being like, oh, well, I mean, it's 6 o'clock, so I should be out collecting more nuts and burying them. But like, I'm really beating myself up. The squirrels aren't talking to themselves like that. So, why are we? So practicing that acceptance and not fighting against something that's a very natural change can be really helpful in reducing the stress we feel because then we have that acceptance. We're not kind of adding to the stress. We can also work to use the time we are feeling motivated in values driven ways. This might be saying, okay, I'm going to shift when I go to bed and when I wake up so I can take advantage of those sunlight hours. Or using the times when it is dark and we don't want to leave the house to work on something meaningful at home. We can also find ways to connect with people without having to brave the outdoors. It could be virtually over the phone, write a letter, send a card to someone, and that doesn't even include the ways we could connect if, we're still not feeling ready to leave the house. Maybe we're having people over, or we feel like, our friend has that really warm winter coat because they live in Chicago. So we'll have them brave the outdoors and come over. And while we might not feel really motivated to get outside, it can be really helpful still. So little things, go out to get the trash can after it's been picked up or checking the mail or just stepping outside real quick to, feel the snow on your face or something like that. Just bundling up to kind of make it a little bit more comfortable, but having that chance to be outside can be helpful. Like I said at the beginning, again, this can be one of the biggest places we're feeling stress. It might be stress because we have more social invitations or less, and they're stressful in their own ways. It's important to remember whether we're deciding about what invitations do I say yes to or no to, or we're feeling left out without them, um, there is a difference between connection and attendance. I can attend something every night of the week, but how much am I actually connecting with people? Genuine and authentic connection with others helps us actually manage stress and provides this sense of zest in our lives. So we want to think about intentionally saying yes to the events that bring connection to us. And if we don't find ourselves with many social invitations, thinking about the ways we are connecting with people and really connecting, not just attending something. Maybe it's calling a friend or grabbing a coffee with them. Connection does not need to be big things. And more often than not, it is happening in the small moments. Additionally, you can help manage social stress by reflecting on what values you are supporting with the events you agree to or don't agree to go to. Using our values to support us in saying no and saying, that's not really in line with what feels important to me. I feel like I need to really be home with my family as opposed to here, can help us tolerate saying no and help us feel like, oh, that was hard. And I feel okay about it. Lastly, knowing our boundaries, knowing what is the amount of time you can spend with certain people. How many events can I actually go to? When do I need a break? And trying not to push ourselves to do much more beyond that. We might have more things, but if we know, I can do like one event a weekend, that's that's okay. I think it's important to remember also boundaries isn't just about setting them, it's about having and supporting them as well. This applies not just to what topics we're going to discuss, what events we're going to go to, but it's about really going back to continually making sure we are reinforcing those boundaries. And being able to reinforce those boundaries gives us great practice in saying no, as well as saying yes and advocating for what we need. So think about what you are able to engage in a social gathering. Is it a time where you can enjoy a cocktail with a friend, or are we going to use alcohol as a way to dampen down and avoid our emotions? So, really thinking about those values, thinking about those boundaries. And can we think on the fly and make a meal out of whatever is served, or do we need to make sure we have a meal before the event to meet our needs? Again, this is something that, that reflection on values, that practice and having boundaries, all of this is going to kind of come together and help us manage these stressors and manage the social situations we find ourselves in. So we've discussed how do we manage the stressors. But the origin of a lot of these holiday traditions, or traditions and holidays and holiday traditions, come from a place of really wanting to create joy when there isn't much else happening and things can feel pretty dark, both literally and figuratively. I love, if anyone's kind of a sci-fi nerd and knows what Doctor Who is, British show, very good. Suggest watching it. There's this great episode, it's a holiday episode of Doctor Who where they say, um, on every world, wherever people are, in the deepest part of the winter, at the exact midpoint, everybody stops and turns and hugs as if to say, well done, everyone. We're halfway out of the dark. Back on Earth, we call this Christmas or the winter solstice. And I think it really helps identify and kind of illustrate for us like why these holidays are important and why we don't want to miss the joy associated with them, because it really is, it's that idea of we've made it halfway through the dark, we've gotten through, the days are about to start getting longer. We're going to start, you know feeling that increase in energy again and desire to get out. And so we want to talk about how we can create those moments of joy during these times when we also know it can be difficult. So I'm going to ask everyone just to take a moment, and you can either write this down on your own or you can just reflect on it in your head. But I want you to take a moment and reflect on what aspects of your own traditions you have really enjoyed. Write down what are the traditions you have, and maybe even some you want to have. So take a moment and just think on that. What are the traditions we engage in? And what are the traditions maybe we want to engage in? Next, I want you to really think about with those traditions you see listed either visually in front of you or maybe in your mind, think about what it really is for you that you enjoy about those traditions. Why are those things that you enjoy? Or maybe they're not things that you enjoy. Is it the connection with others? Is it a feeling of comfort, watching a favorite movie or listening to a favorite song? But think about what it is about these things that you really enjoy and jot those down or mentally jot them down. After you've had a chance to do that, take a look at kind of what you've jotted down or what you've thought about and think about are there any themes in what we've enjoyed? Is it a lot of connection? Is it a lot of comfort? Is it something different? These themes can then really help guide us as to what is going to create joy for us in the present. So what you can do is you can take those themes and really brainstorm the ways you can create them for yourself. So how can I start to honor these themes and create more of them? And this might mean, okay, I'm going to really be present when I'm baking cookies with the kids later because that's something I really enjoy. And so I really want to be present and I want to try to let go of the judgment around if somebody messes it up and puts salt in instead of sugar. I have done that before. It does not go well. But it makes for a very funny memory. Um, so it might mean we're changing some of the traditions also. They might look different than they have in the past, and that's okay. It's about really honoring the themes and about finding ways to really create the joy in the present reality that we have. If it's connecting with others that we really enjoy, it might be something as simple as like, you know what, I am going to send that card to a friend, or I'm going to go out and I'm going to grab coffee with. It might be okay. I don't need to throw a whole party, a whole holiday party. I really just want to kind of connect with these people. So I'm going to find a way to do that. When we're engaging in those activities, it's helpful to really be present, to really be mindful. Use those skills you learned in treatment to work on staying in the moment and focus on what's happening. If you notice you're thinking about your to-do list, you notice you're thinking about the past or the future, work on bringing yourself back, work on using that connection or that comfort or whatever it might be as an anchor and really be present with what it is you're doing. Because this sense of joy, it really is what the holidays are meant to be about. And so this can be a great way for us to find it for ourselves. And with that, we will end and I will take any questions anybody has. And if you have questions later, you can email me.
Thank you so much, Erin, for this wonderful webinar. I feel like you just covered so many different dimensions of the holidays. And so I thank you for that. And we do have a little bit of time for questions. And again, I encourage folks, we've opened up the chat. So if you want to submit any questions, we would love to include them. But I'll kick us off, Erin. I know you spoke a lot about, going to various different social gatherings. That's kind of how you ended this as well. How do you know when you just maybe need a break versus when you're outside of your window of tolerance and it's maybe really time to leave one of those social functions?
Oh, good question. So Window of tolerance is something really personal. So if you all haven't, been in treatment and talked about this, I encourage you to talk about it with your treatment team, whatever that might look like. But really looking at, how intense is this emotional experience that I'm having? Am I able to still bring myself back to the present? Now, I might feel like I'm one of those paddles with like a ball and an elastic string where it's like I'm leaving the present, I'm back to the present, leaving the present, I'm back to the present. I might feel like that. And that still means, okay, I can bring myself back. I'm not getting stuck. We're outside of the window of tolerance when we really can't bring ourselves back to the present. And that's the point we want to not get to, because that reinforces kind of those negative beliefs and that feeling of I can't handle this. So with group members or clients I work with, I always encourage them to start by taking a break. Start by taking a break and do a little bit of mindfulness and see how that goes. If it's really, really hard, that might be a sign that it's like, yeah, going back in there, like I'm really close to the end of my end of my window of tolerance. So I think I'm just going to call it now. But if that really, helps them and they feel like they're really then anchored in the present and can go back, go for it. But it's really something personal. So unfortunately, I can't give like, oh, at this point, that's when you leave. But that goes into the plan we kind of come up with ahead of time.
That was wonderful, Erin. Thank you for that. Another question for you, kind of from a different side, that I think you alluded to, is that the holidays can also be really isolating. Folks also may not be living near or traveling to friends and family. And I'm curious about kind of any tips you have for navigating what can be also maybe a lonely season as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I feel like that was one of the things when I was working on this. I was like, okay, I feel like I'm so focused on like all of the like this and this and this and this. Um, and I was like, yeah, but it can be really lonely, like when we're not with people. I think that again, it goes into that difference between connection versus attendance. We don't need to attend a holiday gathering in order to feel connected with people. And I think it's about looking at what are the things that really help me feel connected to other people. That could be family, that could be friends. But what are the ways I can foster that connection, even if I can't physically attend something with them? I love the idea of writing people a card. We all get so few letters these days that aren't from random things offering us credit cards or tree trimming services or whatever it might be. Um, that it can be really nice and a great way to connect with somebody or just having a phone call with them. But I think really focusing on what helps you to feel connected and trying to highlight those times and those experiences for yourself.
That's great. Thank you, Erin. And I think this will be our last question. I'm curious about, holiday traditions that maybe don't serve us in the same way or that we don't enjoy. What would you say about, is it okay to continue those or make new ones?
I think I'm all about create a new tradition. Like that's totally fine. Like that's part of growing. Where did traditions come from? Somebody one time was like, hey, let's do this. So I think it can be really freeing to know like we don't have to keep doing things and looking at, okay, what is the impact of continuing to do this on me? Is this something that's like, it's just not enjoyable. I'm not loving going to the mall to get the ornaments or whatever it is, and it's not hurting me. Okay, maybe I'll keep doing it because the other people I'm in relationships with really really appreciate this. But looking at, is this hurting either person in the relationship one way or the other? Because that's how we know when it's not good for the relationship as a whole. If we can go and like, it's not my favorite thing to do and I'm willing to do it for the relationship, okay, we keep doing that tradition. If it's starting to hurt me or not be good for me in a way that's not good for the relationship, that's a time to say we're we're going to stop it.
It's a great delineation. Thank you, Erin. This does conclude the presentation as we wrap up at the hour. Once again, thank you so much, Erin, for sharing your expertise with us today. And on behalf of myself, Erin, and the Renfrew Center, thank you all for participating, and we hope you have a wonderful day and holiday season. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.